Hello, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. We're here. God, you can really tell it's first thing in the morning. Good morning. Welcome back into Morning Glory. I'm sorry if you can hear a fan. Hopefully, I've been able to change that in post production because I am fucking sweating. Okay, it's really hot in the UK currently, and I don't want to hear it if you're in another country that's hot. Okay, good for you, guys. I got a comment the other day, and it was like, "Oh, how hot is it really, though? Like, the UK is not known for its hot weather. What? Did you get up to, like, 28 or something? Here in whatever the place was, we're at, like, 35 degrees every day." And I'm like, okay, good for you, diva. I'm sure your country is prepared for such weather. The UK is not, okay? We don't have aircon. We don't have precautions in place for when it gets fucking hot. So, yeah, I have a fan on me. All right. And that's simply just what it's going to have to be. So, yeah. I apologize if you can't hear it, but good morning and welcome back into Morning Glory. We're back for another episode. Now, guys, I do think this is going to be a two-parter, right? I don't know why currently I'm liking the two-parters, but I just think it's fun because I know I've done one of these before. I can't remember which episode it was, but basically we're going to do a huge Q&A. But it's like not going to be like, do you know, like your typical YouTuber Q&A where it's just like very vapid questions that they don't really go into depth with. Like when I do these, I enjoy questions that actually have substance and I can kind of delve into, and it kind of leads me on to certain topics and stuff. So that's what this is going to be. And I've had a bunch sent in from you guys, so many good ones. So if you are interested, make sure you're following me on Instagram, both on my personal and on the Morning Glory one. I'm pretty sure my personal's just Bradley with like, it's Bradley_YY, I'm pretty sure. And the Morning Glory one is Morning Glory_pod or Morning Glory pod. One of the two. Just type in Morning Glory. I'd imagine it'd come up. But that's where I post about these kind of things, like, and get you guys to send in questions and stuff. Just because a bunch of you that will watch these and listen to these are over there. So, yeah, it's the easiest place to get questions. So we have a lot of really, really good ones that I'm excited about. So I do think this will be like a two-parter. This will be the first part, and then I'll come back next week and we'll do a bunch more. You guys know I like to overshare, so here we are. Okay, but otherwise, guys, should we just have a quick heart-to-heart? How are we all doing? To be honest, I'm not doing too bad, right? I'm having a bit of a debacle with my sister currently. We're in a bit of a tiff, but it is what it is. I think what I've just realized a lot over the past year, I'll say, is that it's really come into effect where, like, your family, yes, you love them because they're your family, but you don't always have to like your family. And obviously, like, I've heard people mention this before, but it's just like, it's really proven to be super true. And I think a lot of people need to think about that. Like, I think a lot of people a lot of my family included, they allow a lot of things to go unsaid, or like allow bad behavior to not be spoken about, or I don't know, like, I just don't think people are that honest with their family a lot of the time. And not that I've made it my mission to change that, but I'm just not really the kind of person that is happy to allow bad behavior and behavior that I wouldn't condone, like a friend doing. I don't allow that behavior to be like passable. So like I am someone who, regardless of whether you're like my best friend or my family or whatever, like I will give you the honest truth, whether you like it or not, because I'm sorry, like, sometimes people need that to realize when they're being pieces of shit, you know. And I've had a few instances over the past year or so where it's just like, families are messy, you know. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm definitely not perfect, you know, like, but I am known in my family as being the over opinionated one and the one that's not afraid of confrontation, which I do think sometimes someone being confrontational, it can be somewhat of a negative. And don't get me wrong, it can be a negative when you do go and when you're actively going to look for confrontation, and like you're actively going out of your way to bring people down for no reason when they've not really done anything to warrant you being so abrasive, you know? But I think when it's needed, like sometimes parents and siblings and stuff, they do need to be brought in check. And at the end of the day, if you can't tell your family exactly what you think, then who can you tell? You know, like your family are supposed to be the kind of people that like you can say tell everything to. I know some people aren't as privileged as I am maybe and don't have such close relationships with their families, and that's completely understandable. Like I know I'm quite privileged in that sense. I am pretty close with majority of my family. I wouldn't say extended family. Like a lot of the people I'm kind of referencing are like immediate family that like I speak regularly to. Now, extended family, I don't really see them that much. They don't really know too much about me. They're not. Some of them aren't the most accepting people, which is why I've kind of like distanced myself. And I generally try not to put myself in too many positions where I'm going to be forced to speak to like extended family members. But anyway, all that to say, the only real I don't even know if it's a negative, but like the only real adversity I'm facing currently is kind of just like issues with family members and stuff, and just like it's difficult sometimes when because I don't like to think that I'm all knowing by any means, but I do think it's difficult when like you can just tell that someone is not either not acting like themselves, or I don't know, like when you see something vastly different to someone who you're really close with, it can be very jarring because it just makes you think like, well, why are you not seeing it the way I'm seeing it? Because to me, it's very black and white. Like it's very obvious where we're going wrong here. And it's like you're creating a pattern for yourself, and like this is not the first instance where these kind of issues have arose, you know. And it seems like I just don't like when people don't learn from mistakes, and I do think that's one thing I do is if something shit goes wrong in my life, I'm very actively like, okay, so that went wrong. Let me never put myself in that position again, and let me make sure that never ever will happen again. And some people just don't do that. And I think that's what I find so difficult sometimes. It's just like, how can you not see that this is not serving you very well? So just stop it. So just don't do it. Do something else. Do my eyebrows, you know? But yeah, guys, other than that, like, life's pretty good. I'm not going to lie. I've been working like a fucking Trojan horse the past week, because basically when you're watching or listening to this, because if you didn't know, if you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever else, it is available visually on YouTube, so check it out if you would like. When you're listening to this, I will be at my mum's again, dog sitting again, which I'm kind of annoyed about, because obviously next week is London Pride, and I was planning on going to London Pride, but I can't really knock my mum, because she thought that Pride dropped on the same dates every year. So she did try and go for a different date for her holiday this year, but obviously she didn't know that Pride like moves around a little bit. So I can't really knock her. It's not her fault. She did try and make it so I could also go to Pride and also dog sit for her. And I understand like people might be thinking, well, why can't she just get take him to a kennel or something, which I've mentioned this, but my mum and my family in general, they're a bit more, I don't know, they're obviously very protective of their dog, and they wouldn't want just anybody looking after him, you know, which is understandable. And I don't mind doing it, because realistically, like, it's not like I have to go to work somewhere else. Like, I work in-house. It's very easy for me to be the one to go dog sit, and he is no trouble, right? So I will be dog sitting next week. So that has meant that this week I've realized rapidly that I had a bunch of things to obviously edit. Yes, that's kind of a given. But I had a bunch of things to also film, like future videos that I wanted to film before I go, because I don't love filming at my parents' house. I just like my own setup. I like what I like. And it just annoyed me having to take like all my equipment through and stuff. So obviously, like, every day I've been editing from like 7:30 till like maybe 4 o'clock, and then from about 5 o'clock to about 9 o'clock I then film things. So I've had pretty long days, so I'm a little bit exhausted, so I'm sorry if I'm a little bit like low end this week. But yeah, other than that, like, I love working, so I don't mind working hard, but it is just a bit exhausting. But other than that, guys, I've got no complaints. The sun is out. I'm trying not to complain about being hot, even though I started the podcast off by saying that I was hot. I'm trying not to complain about it, but I am hot. The sun's out. Life's good. Yeah, there's not much going amiss. So there's his update. There's his little heart to heart. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you are watching this on YouTube, how you're doing currently. But yeah, with all that said, let's get into the questiones, because like I said, I have got a bunch of them and I'm so excited because you guys do always come through with the interesting questions, especially if I ask for interesting questions. Like sometimes I will just get, like top or bottom, why are you a skank? Where's the OnlyFans? Like I do get that stuff all the time. But when I ask for more in-depth ones, you guys do tend to come through. So let's crack on in to some questiones. So first one, Mia Fennel. Don't know. She writes, "Hey Brad, I was wondering what your school experience was like. Love you, bestie. Love you too." So my school experience was actually okay for the most part, and I was actually speaking to somebody recently about school and kind of like how I fared with bullies and stuff, because realistically, like I was gay. I was very flamboyant. It was very obvious that I was gay. Like there was no if and buts about it, to be honest. Like as much as I obviously had to come to terms with it myself and discover myself and whatnot, and it's not, you don't pop out the womb and you're like, oh yeah, I know exactly who I am, like it's definitely a process. So I obviously had that, but to an outside perspective, like it was pretty clear that I was somewhat on the gay spectrum, as it were, right? So I obviously got bullied because of that, because I wasn't your traditional, typical straight boy that was like boisterous and rude and mean. I obviously, it's not really in my character. So I was bullied. I will say, though, I don't think I was incessantly bullied. Like, I was never physically bullied. Like, I don't recall ever getting into any sort of fights or anyone, like, pushing and shoving me around. The only thing I do recall, and I think I mentioned this in a prior episode, was one time I do think I got stabbed by a pencil. But that was more just, like, it was very random. Like, that was not the normal for me. And I think someone was just, like, pissed off that I was hanging around the girls that they fancied at the time. So, fair enough. You're jealous of me, I suppose. I'll allow you to stab me with a pencil. It is what it is. Could be worse. Could be a fist to the face, right? So, I got bullied, not incessantly, but I also partially think the reason why I didn't get bullied incessantly was because the way I handled bullies, it was very much like, and this is something that my mum had instilled in me from a young age as well. My mum was always very much like, either stick up for yourself, like don't let people walk all over you, which, preach it, sister. I completely agree. Do not let people walk all over you. And that's what I'd be teaching my kids if I am lucky enough to have children. So that's one thing. But then another thing is, like, don't give bullies the satisfaction of showing that you care, or like, not even showing that you care. Don't give them the satisfaction of letting them see that it's getting to you or allowing it to get to you, full stop. Because my mum always kind of made sure I was aware that, like, anything that these people say, it's all just words at the end of the day. These people don't know you. They don't care to know you. They have an idea of you. And they're only emulating traits that maybe their parents would have portrayed in school. Like, at the end of the day, children aren't born to be assholes. They're taught to be assholes, So my mum was always very much like, water off a duck's back. Let them say what they want to say. It doesn't affect you. There's no need for it to affect you. And of course, like, some days it would get to me, as it would any child. But I don't really recall it being that much of a thing for me. And I think it's because, like, I didn't really live my life for school. I think a lot of people, school was like their whole entire life. Like, you go to school, you go home, you do your homework, you go to school again the next day. Whereas, like, my life was kind of dance. So, like, I'd obviously go to school. Yes, I'd work hard. Yes, I'd do my work and whatever, and I'd do my homework. But I automatically knew, like, I had a different passion, and it wasn't something that school was going to allow me to pursue, and that it was also something that people at school would not be. People in school would take the piss out of me for it, essentially. So I just focus on that. I'd focus on the after school stuff. Like, I'd go home, I'd get changed, I'd go straight to dancing, and I'd be at dancing for like. So I'd finish school at what? Isn't it usually like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the UK or something? I'd go home, I'd get changed, I'd have some food really quick, and then I'd go straight through to dancing, and then I'd be at dancing till like 9, half 9 at night. So like, I didn't really have time to sit and stew over bullies, you know? So it kind of is what it was, and I was kind of part of a group. Now, don't get me wrong, I was friends with a lot of people. Like, I was like surface level friends with a lot of people. I wouldn't ever say that I had close friends. Like, I was mainly part of, I'd say, the outcast group, which makes sense. Like, it was a lot of the emos, the people that were exploring their sexuality, that whole thing. The boys that I didn't know were gay at the time, but all ultimately ended up being gay. I was part of that group, which makes total sense. But past that, I was also the kind of gay that was also friends with a lot of the girls. Like, I got along with a lot of the girls and that whole thing. Like, the popular girls were also kind of like my girls. So it was kind of just like, I kind of like bobbed from crew to crew. I kind of always spoke to people wherever I went. I wouldn't say I was Mr. Popular by any means, but I was kind of just floating there. Whereas at dancing, I was Mr. Popular. I'd go to dancing and I'd be like, yes, I'd be obviously there to train, but I didn't really take dancing that seriously until I was maybe 14, 15 years old. And I'd kind of just go for the socializing aspect. And obviously I was going with my sister. She was taking it much more serious than me. And that we've kind of reflected on this before. And I think we also spoke about it in our podcast episode that we did together way back when. But it was very much like I was there, the class clown, Mr. Popular, got along with all the girls, would chat a lot. She was the complete opposite. Like, she didn't really have that many close friends at dancing. Like, she was there to work hard, to progress, that whole thing. And it's interesting how that's kind of like been emulated throughout our life. Like, she still opens up to me a lot about having issues making friends. And I mean, obviously I'm over here also talking about that these days, but like, I've never really had an issue with making friends when I'm in that certain environment. But obviously now that I'm not in that environment, it's difficult. But I'm here like broadcasting my life and my feelings online. Whereas I don't think she could imagine a world in which that would happen, you know? So I just think it's interesting how that was emulated. So overall, my school experience wasn't that bad. Yes, I got bullied a little bit. I didn't let it bother me. I think my mum's whole thing was like, just laugh at them. Like, they want you to be angry. They want you to be sad. That's why they're doing it. So, like, do the complete opposite. Laugh it off. And almost give it back a little bit. You know? And I think there did become a point where, like, even the straight popular boys didn't hate me. Like, I do recall, like, being able to speak to a lot of the popular boys. But, like, there was a certain popular crowd that I was like, yeah, that's never going to be the case for me. But it was also never going to be the case because I didn't want it to be the case. Like, I didn't want to be friends with these hoes. Like, they were rude. They were disrespectful. They were pieces of shit. So, like, why would I want to be your friend, you know? So, overall, like, I can't really complain about school. Like, yeah, I'm sure there's, like, a bit of trauma there. And I'm very well aware of, like, people in other years taking the piss out of me. Like, for example, my sister, once again, we obviously used to dance together. And I remember once we got asked to do a performance at school, which, by all means, I'll do that. And I was also in the Gifted and Talented at school, and it was like an after-school club, which was also dancing. So we used to do performances at school with that, as well as, like, me and my sister got asked to do a performance at school in an assembly for the whole fucking school to watch. So, of course, other people in other years knew about me, knew that I danced, and they'd obviously say things to my sister about me. She'd obviously stick up for me. I think in general, like, our parents were always just like, we're a family, we stick up for each other, that kind of thing. And that's kind of how I've been my whole life. Like, if my sisters had issues, I'd be the first one there to rally by their side and be like, absolutely fucking not. You know? So school life, really can't complain. And I think I'm pretty privileged in that. Like, I think a lot of people struggle a lot with school. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't my favorite place. And like when people say, "Oh, I'd love to go back to school," yeah, because you probably had a good time. I would not want to go back to school. It wasn't a hoot, you know? So next we've got, it's John Savage said, "What injury took you out of the dance industry?" Now, I do think I've spoken about this before. I must have somewhere. I think it might have been like another Q&A, maybe on like the actual YouTube channel or something. But if you didn't know, I was a dancer. I've been dancing all of my life, as I mentioned. I did go to uni for dance. I did dance in college. I have a degree in dance now. And I did start pursuing a professional dance career. I did a contract over in Asia that was an absolute goddamn mess, which I do think I want to go into detail a bit more about that in a future episode, because I have done before, but not recently. And I've obviously gained a lot of new viewers recently. So I want to go into that again and like fill you guys in, because it's a crazy story, right? So all that to say, I was very much like in the zone of pursuing a dance career. Basically what happened with that is COVID obviously hit in 2020, like beginning of 2020. I think it was March in 2020. I graduated from uni in 2019, and then I think I took like maybe 2 months off, and then in August, just before my birthday, I went to Asia. I did a contract over there that was meant to be 7 months. It only ended up being 5 months, partially because I disembarked early, but then also 10 days after I chose to leave, everybody else came home because of COVID. So the timing was a bit rough on my part, but yeah. So I did that contract. Then I came home. I'm pretty sure COVID was hitting, because I was over in Asia, and like we were obviously touring like Japan, China and stuff. So it had hit over there first. So obviously that's how I found out about it. And then obviously everyone on that ship came home, and then there was still a little bit of time, I'd say maybe 2 months, before it properly hit and we were in lockdown in the UK. So I then had 2 months where I was kind of like living with my family again, but spending a lot of my time down in London with my friends, staying with them, like kind of like couch surfing, whatever. And then I'm pretty sure I auditioned for a bunch of agencies. I ended up getting about 3 agencies behind me. And I was planning on then trying out the freelancing vibe, which is very different to what I was doing before. I was much more of a company dancer. Like, I like the security of being in a company and like having a contract that you sign that says like you'll be employed for a certain amount of time. Whereas freelancing, it's very much like constant networking, constant going for auditions. You never know when the next paycheck is coming. But I was going to give it a bash because the contract over in Asia was so rough. I then obviously got the agencies behind me, had 3 agencies going. I was going to be doing modeling, dancing, all the things. Like I was kind of like broadening my horizons a little bit, to the point where I was like, okay, well, I've got these 3 agencies. I've got jobs that should start coming in, auditions that should start coming in. I can always get a normal job to obviously like pay my rent and pass some time if I've got like a slower time. So my plan was to then obviously get a flat. I got a flat in Luton because I couldn't afford to live alone in London for the foreseeable, and I also didn't want to commit to doing that fully because I obviously didn't know how it was going to pan out. And then I got my flat in Luton for 6 months, signed the contract and moved in a week before COVID hit, and then I was basically in lockdown in that flat for the whole 6 months. Dwindled my savings, had to move back up north. And then straight away after COVID hit, obviously I wasn't dancing, there was no jobs, there was nothing we could do. So I was just like passing the time. And that's when I started doing YouTube like properly. So I'd been doing YouTube up until that point, but like it was very much like I was just having fun. Like I'd do little makeover videos of like my flat or whatever, and like I'd just do fun videos. Like there wasn't really a rhyme or reason to any videos. It was just kind of like, we'll do a mukbang, we'll do a challenge, like we'll just have some fun. So that's what I was doing for a while. And then in lockdown was when I decided to pursue reaction content, which is kind of like, in my opinion, that's the official start of my YouTube career, because up until that point, it was just like fun. So whenever people are like, when did you start doing YouTube? I always think of like 2020 as that, because that was kind of like the time when I started taking it serious and pursuing it as a potential career option, you know, and wanting it to become a career. So that's when I started YouTube, which makes sense. And then straight out of COVID, obviously I had to move back up north. I started teaching dance more, rather than actually being a dancer. And I'm someone who, I enjoy teaching dance, but I don't enjoy teaching lessons. Like, I enjoy private lessons. I enjoy choreographing. I enjoy making routines for people and like that whole thing. Like, I like the creativity behind it. I don't like teaching a full lesson of pupils, but I did that, started doing that. And then basically, I think through going to uni for ballet and like kind of pushing myself physically for 3 years, and like, if you know anything about ballet, it's an extremely demanding style of dance. Doing that for 3 years every day in such an intense format, and then not doing anything during COVID, and then going straight back into trying to like teach hardcore and like do a bunch of private lessons, I just think my body had like kind of been fucked over. So I think it was probably coming a lot, but I remember vividly there was one private lesson where I was teaching this guy called Theo, who's now doing phenomenally in London at a uni. So slay, good for you, Theo. But there was a private lesson where I distinctly remember at the end, me and him performing together the solo full out for like a bunch of people in the school, because people wanted to see the solo and they thought, oh, two boys dancing, fun. So we performed it. I hadn't warmed up to the point of like being able to do it that full out, but I just didn't have the time, so I went for it. And I recall after that, I kind of like experienced a lot of back pain, and then it just kind of deteriorated from there. My back pain got worse and worse. I ended up not being able to walk for a while, or like I'd walk, but with like excruciating pain. I don't drive, so obviously that made it hard for me to get anywhere. I decided that I wanted to move out of my parents' house, so like I'd have to walk to the station in literal agony, so then I could come through to Leeds to like Flatview, and that was a whole time. And then once I'd moved to Leeds, I decided to get an MRI scan, and then I think it was like 2 months later after the MRI scan that they got back to me. Turns out I'd slipped a disc on one side, I had a bulging disc on the other side that was then pressing on my L5 nerve, I think, which is essentially the nerve that goes all the way down your leg, which was why I was getting sciatic pain. But by this point, I'd been living in Leeds for like 2 months, which meant that I was obviously walking a lot more, doing a lot more, and yeah, just teaching a lot more in like a healthy way. And I'd got back into workouts and stuff. So by the time of them like getting back to me and being like, oh, you should get surgery, I was like, oh, I don't want a surgery, because I'm like organically feeling better, if that makes sense. Like, yes, I still had a little bit of pain, but I could tell that it was gradually getting better, and I was doing things that meant it would have continued to get better. Now, the woman did say to me on the phone, she was like, we would recommend spinal surgery for you right now, but obviously that would mean that you'd be out for a long time, and not being able to teach, not being able to do anything. And I was like, right, well, would I rather stop dancing and teaching now when I'm basically in my prime, or would I allow it to go on, see if my back gets better, which, plot twist, it obviously has done. See if my back gets better, because the thing is with slip discs, like they can gradually like heal themselves. Like it's not like a thing that you need to have surgery on, but obviously if it's that bad, then they do recommend it. Because I had a bunch of other issues. Basically, my lumbar spine, which is like the lower part of your spine before your coccyx, a lot of my vertebrae were much like shorter towards the bottom, because I kind of put that down to obviously training in ballet and stuff. If you've seen what ballerinas have to do, it can definitely lend itself to that. And obviously like forcing my back to do more than it's probably able to. Yeah, basically I'd worn down my vertebrae in my back, especially in the lower part, to the point where the woman was like, your lower back looks like that of like a 50, 60-year-old. Like, it's not what someone in their 20s should look like. So on top of all that, I had a bunch of other like back issues that were causing these issues, right? But it did gradually get better, which is a slay. Got better. Like, don't get me wrong, I still have a little bit of back pain here and there, but it's nothing compared to what it was. So I think I made the right choice not getting spinal surgery. And yeah, obviously she mentioned to me, she was like, if you don't get spinal surgery now, like it might get better, but it's probably going to be one of those things that like ebbs and flows. You know, like it comes back sometimes, like it might flare up every now and then. Like you're going to be just generally prone to more back issues than the average human. So I was like, you know what? Fair enough. I'll take it on the chin. If that happens, then who knows, down the line, I can always think about getting surgery. And I mean, look at me now. I don't even teach dance anymore. Like I don't dance at all. The only active thing I do is go to the gym, you know? So yeah. So it kind of like it worked out for the best. And that's why I decided to obviously stop dancing completely, because I couldn't do it professionally anymore because of my back. And then obviously that's what forced me then into teaching. And then I just really didn't enjoy the teaching. Like I enjoyed teaching the kids, but there was so much more that went into it, like tensions within like the faculty members and stuff that I'm not going to go into. That kind of meant that I didn't really feel welcome at that place anymore, even though it was like the place that I'd grown up like learning how to dance. And then I decided to stop that because ultimately it kind of came down to the point where I'm not enjoying it. It's not how I'm making my living anymore. Like YouTube was doing really well. I was earning like enough to live. So I decided last July that I was going to stop teaching altogether. And I had planned on like giving them a bunch of notice and like going all the way up until summer. Something happened. I didn't do that. I ended up walking out. And I've never spoken to the faculty members again. Yeah, very unprofessional on my part, absolutely. But if you were in my position, you knew all the tea, you'd probably understand. But yeah, so that's now why I'm just YouTubing. I understand that that's not that was much more than the actual question asked, but there you go. That's why I'm now out of the dance industry, and don't get me wrong, I think there's a part of me that still misses performing on stage, but I ultimately kind of think like I'm still kind of like entertaining in some way, and like as much as I believed growing up that my destiny, as it were, was to be on stage, to dance, to be a dancer, to like be in an amazing company and perform for audiences, whatever. Like, ultimately, I know that's not exactly what I'm doing, but it kind of is. And if anything, I'm performing and, like, entertaining more people than I ever imagined I'd be entertaining, you know? And I know it's not with, like, my dancing ability. It's more just with my personality, I suppose, and, like, my editing abilities. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. So I try not to think of it as, like, a complete L, because I do think, like, there is a certain amount of showmanship that kind of goes into this job, I think. Because as much as like I don't obviously put on a facade, like, hello, I'm chatting to you right now, this is not a facade, like I am who I am. Still, it's like I take pride in my videos and content, and I want to create good content for you guys. You know, like I'm still creating something, which I think is still nice. So yeah, as much as I'm not dancing, and I do kind of miss the performance aspect, I do not miss the industry itself, but we'll go into that a little bit later or in the next part, because there is more questions about dance as we go. So yeah, there's that. Are you afraid of not being able to continue doing YouTube as you get older? In brackets, I want to start YouTube, but I'm afraid. To be honest, I don't know why, but recently this is something that has been brought to my attention a lot. Like, I've not really thought about it too much, but recently I've heard from a few people being like, oh, you're not worried about like the longevity of this? And I mean, realistically, yes, I am. But I also know I'm the kind of person that, like, if all this did go away and you guys got bored and you didn't want to watch me anymore, first of all, fair enough. Second of all, I'm not going to be like, I don't see myself being someone who's going to keep clawing at the success. I think if anything, like, if I really just dwindled into, like, obscurity, right? Because I'm not saying that I do that well now. Like, yes, my videos do well enough for me to live and live well. I'm not taking that away from myself. I'm not this YouTuber with millions and millions of subscribers, you know? So it's not like I'm at the height of my career yet. Like, I still see myself hopefully growing a lot more, but we shall see as we go. But yeah, ultimately, it's one of those things where it's just like, if it all does end, then I will find something else to do. You know, I'm not someone who's just going to keep clawing at trying to have any sort of relevance. Like, if I get to the point of it becoming, like, just embarrassing at this point, I think it's when, like, if you've had viewers and then they're just not there anymore, it's just like, well, what am I doing this for? Like, I'm clearly doing something wrong here that's meant that, like, I've lost a bunch of viewers, you know? So I think at that point, or even if just, like, the internet just stops for God knows what reason, which I do not see happening, I think I'd just figure something else out. Now, don't get me wrong, it'd be a real shock, because realistically, I've never really actually had a normal job, like normal, quote-unquote, 9-to-5 job. I've never really had one. So it would be a shock. But I also think maybe what I'd do is, I don't know, I'd maybe go back to school for something, or I'd maybe do tattoo artistry. Maybe I'd try and pursue art a bit more, because growing up, like, I'm pretty sure someone did ask this question, so I guess I'm answering this question now. Growing up, I obviously was kind of torn between dancing and loving that, but also really loving art. But it kind of came to a point where I was like, okay, well, which one's actually going to be a bit more doable? And I think dance was just a bit more, I don't know, it was just one that I could see having a better outcome. I think art and being an more and using your artistic abilities in that kind of way is a bit more difficult to make a career out of. Like, it's not impossible, but it's more difficult, I feel. So I did just choose to pursue a dance career. So I think if this went away, I don't think I would go back to dancing. Or maybe I would physically. Maybe I'd try and get myself back into it physically now that my back is a little bit better. Maybe I'd try and find a way of me going back into that. Or I think I'd probably go to, like, school for tattoo artistry and maybe become a tattooist, because for a long time I wanted to do that. But who knows? Hopefully it doesn't go anywhere. Hopefully you guys will stick around. But ultimately, we never know, you know? So it's something that I try not to think about, because I think if I think about it too much, then I'll probably freak myself out. But yeah. So here's hoping it doesn't happen. But if it is, I'm sure I'll be fine. Life moves on, you know? Doesn't all stop. Next question. Someone said, do you think you're ready to get a dog again? Are you fucking insane? No way. It's not been long enough, first and foremost. Like, I'd still be traumatized if I got a dog now. So if you didn't know, I got a dog. It didn't end well. So if you want to watch that, there is a podcast episode a few weeks back. Check it out. I think it's titled "What Happened to My Dog" or something. Check it out. I'm not gonna lie, it's a depressing one. It's a depressing watch. But yeah, no, it's not been long enough. My circumstances have not changed. Like, I want a dog when I get a house, I get a husband, I maybe have kids. And yeah, I need a garden. I need someone to co-parent with me. Like, the main reason for getting rid of him now was just, like, the timing was just really not correct, and my circumstances were just not what they needed to be to give him the best life, essentially. So no, it's been maybe 2 months. My life's not changed that much in 2 months. I'm still in the same old flat. Okay, I'm still single. So no. Not ready to get a dog. Do miss him, though. Miss him terribly. And yes, I know I only had him for a short period of time, but oh my God, I miss him. And I do look at the pictures and the videos often. Okay? Oh, but I'm keeping the name. I don't know if I ever told you guys the name. I called him Frank, basically. I love the name Frank for a dog, so I am going to keep the name. Like, I don't think just because I called him Frank, I can't call my next dog Frank. I don't know. I didn't have him long enough for him to really understand what his name was anyway. So I think I'm going to call my next dog Frank. Okay? But that won't be for maybe another, year, 2 years. Like, I'm thinking in the next year, 2 years, I'd like to look at getting a house, whether that's like renting it first or buying one. Because realistically, like, as much as I'd love to buy a house, I am worried about, like, finding the right place to buy a house, because I'm not someone who really has a preference as to where I want to live the rest of my life. Like, I know I don't want to be near my parents, because that area just brings back bad memories. There's nothing there. It's not exciting. So I know that I want to be in a city, but, like, in an ideal world, like, yeah, London's really cool, and a lot of my friends are down London. But I can't imagine buying a house down London. Like, I think I'd want to kill myself if I did that, because I don't enjoy London as much as I did when I lived there. So, like, I want it to be quieter than London, but not as quiet as my hometown. So, like, I do think the area that I'm in now, like I do love Leeds. Like I think that could work, but I almost think like I've not really explored other cities enough to know where I'd want to live. Like I almost think Manchester could be really fun, but I've not lived there, so I don't know if I'd want to like get a house there before I live there. So I think the next step for me would be like maybe in another year, 2 years of living in this flat, because I don't want to move out of this flat yet. I've moved every year or 6 months for like the past maybe 6-7 years of my life. I don't want to move again yet. Like I'm hoping, let's all pray and hope, right, that they're going to let me stay in this fucking flat for another year at least. Okay? Because I don't want to move yet. So give me another year in this flat. Then I think I'd be ready to maybe get a house. But my plan is maybe to rent a house first, maybe in a different city, explore that, explore my options before actually committing to buy a house somewhere. Because I don't want to buy a house and then be in an area that I really don't like, you know? So that's the plan with that. Don't know how we got onto that topic. Oh, the dog thing. But yeah, so maybe in 2 years, maybe I'll have a husband, maybe not a husband by then, but maybe I'll have a boyfriend by then. Maybe I'll have a house by then, and then I'd get a dog. Okay? Because I can't wait for a dog. Like, I know I'm going to be a great dog owner, because best believe, I had that dog for such a short amount of time, but I was prepared to give him the best fucking life. Like, I had bought him so much shit already in that short amount of time. It's actually crazy. So like, I know, given the chance, I'm going to be an impeccable dog dad, right? And just dad in general. Like, I know I'm meant to be a father. I know that I'm going to be a really fucking good dad, whenever that happens. But it's just a matter of time, and I'm in no rush. I think the beauty of being gay and, like, not kind of having the whole, like, body clock thing happen and us being able to adopt or do surrogacy or just having other options to obviously, like, get a child, which anybody has that option, obviously. But I think a lot of women want to obviously carry their own child and whatever. And that's kind of like their first option. Obviously, if I could carry a child, best believe I'd probably want to. Actually, no, I probably wouldn't. But I think... yeah, I want babies. I want a dog, but that's probably going to happen maybe in my 30s, maybe even into my 40s for kids, you know? I think kids are a commitment, and I think unless you're really, really ready, I don't think people should be having kids. But that's just my opinion. I think too many times people just have kids for the fun of it, and we don't actually think about the longevity of it and the consequences of that action. And yeah, I just think sometimes I do think we'd maybe benefit from, you know, a little screening before you're allowed to have kids. I think that would be really fun for some people. Because I don't know if everyone should be just allowed to have kids whenever they want, because I don't think that's always what's best for the child. But that's just my opinion. Moving on. This is so much fun. I'm living. Are you guys living? I hope you're living. Okay, so next question. Was your mum a dancer? Or does she just have, like, interest in dancing? Now, I don't believe my mum ever, like, professionally danced or, like, even went to a dance class. But I think she really just had an interest in dance. But I know for a fact my mum's childhood was a pretty tough one. I mean, as was probably a lot of people's childhoods back then. Like, I don't really know my granddad on my mum's side that well, because he died either before I was born or when I was really, really young. So I never really got to know him, and I don't really remember him. But I've not heard the greatest things from my mum. I'm pretty sure she had kind of like a tough childhood where it was kind of just like... it was kind of just like she had passions and she had things that she would want to pursue, but she was unable to do so because of her parents. Or I don't think it was necessarily my grandma. I think it was more my granddad in that instance. Like his priority was not making sure that my mum had the time or the privilege of pursuing her passions. So I think my mum more just like really enjoyed dancing and still does enjoy dancing and thinks obviously it's a wonderful art form, but she never really had the option to pursue it. And I think that's almost why she was never really like pushy of us to get into it, but she was always like very open for us to do it. You know, like she was never like, oh, are you sure you want to do this? Like my mum was just like, okay, you want to do it? Let's go. Let's fucking do it. If you're going to do it, we're going to do it properly, you know? Like she was very supportive in that sense. Like she was a real dance mum, but not like, not the terror of the dance mums that we see in, you know, dance mums. So yeah, kind of sad. Like I wish my mum did have the chance to obviously like go to a dance class. Next, what is the best underwear you have reviewed so far? Now, if you didn't know, I do consider myself quite the reviewee, especially when it comes to underwear and like loungewear and such. I love underwear. And I think before I get into that question, because a lot of people like are almost a little bit confused why I want to do those kind of videos. And I think a lot of people get confused thinking it's like I want to show off. I want people to like look at my body. It's really, really not that. It's more just like I enjoy that kind of content, one, because this is how I got into reactions too. I don't watch as many reactions anymore, mainly because I do them myself, and I think that's completely normal. I watch a lot of product review videos. Like I love Mia Maples, I love Naomi John, I love Sophia Nygaard, I love a lot of the like those girlies. But then I also notice like, oh, there's really not many men that do this. And realistically, I understand, like, I guess it's more normalized, like, socially, for women to do that more. But why the hell can men not? You know, like, us men, we also like underwear. We also like clothes. Like, we also like products. Like, there's products that we want to buy. Yes, I don't think it's necessarily as big of a market, but there definitely is men out there that want this kind of content, you know? And if people watch me and like they're only watching in like a seedy way, then that's fair enough. But I'm doing it, and like I met someone at Hoopla that was like, thank you for doing them, basically. But like I'm pretty sure he said he was like, oh, you do the reviews for the gays. And I mean, if that's what it is, then slay, you know? Because us gays, we need it sometimes. We want underwear reviews and stuff. Like, I want to watch a man talk about underwear because I want to know what the good underwear brands are. You know? But that goes for anything. Clothing, whatever. Food, anything. Like, literally anything. I just think there's, like, such a lack of men in the review space, like the product review space. And I'm just like, why the hell are we not doing it? So, first of all, that's why I do them. I know someone asked a question later on and it was like, where did your obsession with underwear come from? And I wouldn't say it's an obsession. I like underwear. I think underwear is very sexy. And I also like fun underwear because I just think like women are allowed to have fun underwear. Why aren't men? It's kind of like a double standard in my opinion. So I'm always here to support fun brands that create fun pieces, you know? Because why the hell not? You're doing something a bit different and I like that. But my favorite underwear that I've reviewed, that's a tough one because there's certain ones from each. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I'm sat here currently in just like a bog standard H&M pair. But my favorite like simplistic, comfortable undies are Skims, and I'm sorry, I'm not a Kim stan really, but does she make good underwear? Yes. So I'd say for that, it's Skims. For fun items, I loved Modus Vivendi. I really want to do a part 2 to the Modus Vivendi ones. So I'd say if you're looking for like fun undies, Modus Vivendi is really fun. I really liked, what else did I like? Hunk, that Hunk brand, they're really fun. And I like them. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like I look at different brands for different things. Like I really like the boxers from Pump. Those boxers are everything. They're maybe my favorite pair of boxers I own, to be honest. So like that's also great. I don't know. I just find it very fun, and I just don't think it's that deep. Like I'm not afraid of the naked human body. I'm not afraid of showing a bit of skin. Don't get me wrong. I'm used to obviously getting comments about like my personality and stuff and people not liking my personality. Having people really degrade your appearance is something I've had to kind of like adjust to because obviously I've not really had that too much. I've had it, but not to the degree that sometimes people do on these kind of review videos. And sometimes it does make me think like, oh, do I really want to put myself up for this? You know, that whole thing. But part of me is like, you know what? No, I'm not letting these people usher me out of the review space. Fuck that. Okay? Who says you have to be stick thin to do product reviews? Nobody. Okay? So there's that. But anyway, hopefully that answered your question. Things you couldn't care less about. Tories. Oh, do you want to drive? Guys, maybe this will be the last one for this part 1. But I've actually booked my first driving test. The first driving lesson. Okay? Now, they did offer me a driving lesson for today at 8 a.m. But I was like, no, that's not going to happen. One, it's too soon. Two, I'm going to be at my parents' for like a week and a half after this week. And I wouldn't want to take such a long break in between lessons for me to like freak out again. So I was like, is there any possibility of me starting when I come back from my parents? So I've got a driving lesson booked. It's just like my initial like assessment, a 2-hour lesson where they can like see what I can do, whatever, which is nothing. I can't do anything. I haven't driven before. I've only been in the front. I've only been in the driver's seat once in a car, and it was during uni, and it was terrifying. I didn't do much. Like I literally started the car and went to pull off, and I've ruined my life from that day on. That's kind of like giving me PTSD. So that's the reason why I think I'm so scared. But I think at this point in time, I need a car. If I want a house, I don't want a house in the center of a city. So I'm going to need a car to be able to travel. I don't want to rely on public transport. That just doesn't seem chic to me. So I'm just at the point where, like, there's nothing stopping me. I need a car. I need to learn. I want to be able to come and go as I please. And, like, you know, I just want to be able to drive now. So I need to get over my fear and just fucking do it. So I've booked my first driving lesson. So hopefully this year, here's hoping I'll have passed my driving test. But we shall see. It might take me into next year. Who knows? Hopefully not, though. Okay, I'm hoping I'm going to... Because I really do think I'm going to be a good driver because I'm very cautious. I'm very by the book. I'm very by rules, and I will learn. Like, I'm very good at revising. If I need to learn something, I will learn it. Okay? So like, I do really think I'm going to be a great driver, but it's just getting over the fear of actually getting in the car and doing it. I almost think when I go to my parents, I might just like sit in the front seat of my sister's car because it's just sat on the driveway and just like look at things and like just get to grips with the like where things are potentially. So yeah, I do want to drive and I'm going to actively learn soon. And here's hoping, please pray for me. Here's hoping it's not going to be terrifying. But yeah, so that's that, guys. This is gonna bring us to the end of this one. Now, I don't think I've really answered many questions. It's maybe going to have been maybe 6 questions. So this is why we're doing a part 2 to this, because I have maybe 50 questions to try and get through. So yeah, obviously we can keep these going because I love these episodes. They're just so easy to film and record. So yeah, this is going to be the first episode. I'll be back next week to answer more questions. And if you'd like me to continue doing these, please do let me know because I enjoy them. And I do think they maybe could be interesting to you guys. Who knows? But yeah, with all that said, thanks for listening. Love yous lots. See you next week. Goodbye.